Hi, my name is Sal Carceller. I live in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and I'm here today to tell you about RhodeMap RI and what I've learned about it over the last few weeks. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. I am a first-generation immigrant. My father immigrated to this country from Spain in 1966. I came here at 2 years of age, and within 2 years of being here, my father bought his first home. That is really the American dream. I don't align myself as a minority. I am an American. I also don't really align myself with either political party. I mean, I'm an independent. But I do work for IBM. I've been with IBM for 31 years. And I'm just here to tell you, a citizen's view of what he thinks about RhodeMap RI. Okay, so this is the RhodeMap RI. Everything I'm going to show you is available on the web. I encourage you to do your own reading and do your own research. There are parts of this document that I don't have issue with, and I'm not really going to cover those, right? What I want to cover is where I see the problem areas, as I see. And I'm not just going to tell you what I think they are. I'm going to show them to you, right? And why I think every citizen in Rhode Island should be concerned. The first thing is when you hear the term RhodeMap RI, I was naive. I obviously thought that, wow, this sounds like a new initiative. It's been thought up by the good people of Rhode Island, hopefully lots of good business people involved here to come up with the initiative for RhodeMap RI. I will tell you right now that that is the furthest from the truth. This was not put together by Rhode Island citizens. Okay, so, and I'm going to prove that. I'm not just going to sit here and say that, right? It's also not an economic recovery plan. It's not that at all. You may think it is, and that's why I want to show truly what it is. So the first thing is, let's just go to RhodeMap RI. You can read a lot of this for yourself, but let's just click on Learn More. The first telling sign that I got a hold of is, they tell you all about the about and how great Rhode Island is and all that, but I'm going to show you the areas you need to concentrate on. Right here. First of all, it states right up front, and it's stated in every document, that RhodeMap RI is funded by Sustainable Communities Initiative Grant. The grant is one of several offered through the Federal Partnership of Sustainable Communities, and it is basically a subarm of HUD. Now, that caught my attention right away, because if the program is totally funded by HUD, then HUD's going to want certain mandates placed upon it. And that's what first caught my interest. Okay? And we're going to dive into that. And I can tell you that my initial inclinations were correct. So what I wanted to do next was I kind of wanted to understand a few more things about HUD and sustainable communities. But before I go there, I asked that while I go through this video, you keep a couple things in mind, right? One is, please try to put the hat on of thinking of yourself as a business person or somebody thinking of bringing a business to Rhode Island, okay, as I go through this. So think of it in that term. You're from out of state and you want to come in and bring your business to Rhode Island. All right. The other thing I want to point out, something that's very important that when I moved to Rhode Island, I found quite powerful. I've been privileged to be involved in altering the charter for our town, Portsmouth, twice. Once on my own initiative and another time appointed as the chairman for a charter review committee just recently, just a few years ago. It was a very rewarding process. So I do know a little bit about how legal documents are worded and what they mean to us as citizens. Now, why do I want to point you to the Rhode Island General Assembly and particularly the Constitution of the state of Rhode Island in Article number 13? You can read this for yourself, but here's the bottom line. It's this word, right? It's this sentence right here. Article 13 says that it is the intention of this article to grant and confirm to the people of every citizen in town in the state the right of self-government in all local matters. That means that every city and town has the opportunity to develop their city and town the way the people who live in that city see fit. Okay? Keep that in mind. That's granted to us under Article 13. And that will remain that way so long as you don't give that privilege up. That means you do not enter an agreement with somebody who can then override these privileges. So it's very important for our local leaders to understand this, right? They have a huge responsibility on their shoulders. All right. So now that we understand that, let's go back to RhodeMap RI. So the first thing I wanted to know is, okay, what is a Sustainable Communities Initiative grant? So, we can come over, do a quick look, and we can see, I can tell you can go look at these yourself, the sustainablecommunities.gov. It's an interesting site. This is kind of like trying to build a nice, pretty view of what a sustainable community is. But the one that is most interesting is the Policy Link one, because this one called Policy Link is the actual policies for a sustainable community. Now remember, the grant was given to you under the pretense of this sustainable community. So there's an overview. They tell you a lot of nice stuff about why a community should be sustainable and what the reasons are for that. That's good. Then they tell you about community opportunities, right? The Federal Sustainable Community Initiative, known as SCI, was implemented by the Obama administration in 2009 and to establish a partnership for sustainable communities. We already heard that back on the RhodeMap RI. So what's interesting here is that the idea of a sustainable community is not RhodeMap RI's idea. It is the idea of HUD and this Sustainable Communities Initiative. Right, so we need to be clear on that, right? I didn't know that, right? So that's kind of why I want to put this video together, so you do know that. And it's basically to support the planning and implementation of resources to foster communities. Okay, so far so good. Then they go on to say there's 143 grantees. What does that mean? A grantee is somebody who took the money. In other words, we gave you the money to do the planning, and now you are a grantee. And they go on to tell you that for the 143 communities and regions that engage in the planning, it's going to be a prosperous future. Okay? And maybe it will. We don't know. And then they further go on to say we need more legislation to help sustainable communities out. All right. Now here's the real problem area, guys. So under capacity building, they state, so remember, when you take this money, you agree to these principles and these goals. So they state equity, environment, and economy are the foundational components for a sustainable community. I believe that. That sounds reasonable. Equity is advanced through the initiative, through guidance, all right? That the grantee must. This is a very strong word. It means that if you take the money, you are the grantee, and then you must abide by these rules. Develop an accurate and nuanced picture of equity and opportunity in each group. We're going to talk about this in a minute, what that means. What do they mean by a nuanced picture, and how do you develop a picture of that? It's going to be, that comes down in a minute. And then dedicate the resources to low-income communities and communities of color. I have no problem with that. That seems okay. This one is troubling to me because I don't know what it means. Place equity leadership on the governing consortia. Not sure. And meet the equity outcomes that address racially concentrated poverty. So once again, obviously it is HUD. That's their core mission. And that's okay. So then they go on down here to explain, through a Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD contract that provides capacity building support, we, meaning this SCI initiative, in partnership with the Kirwan Institute of Race and Ethnicity. Keep this name in mind, the Kirwan Institute. Who are they and what do they do? We're going to show you that in a minute. But so the Kirwan Institute ensures that the the key word here is they ensure. They are the policing mechanism that the sustainable communities grantees achieve the equity goals. So they're going to make the goals for us. That's what RhodeMap RI is. And then they're going to give us the policing mechanism to basically ensure that we meet those goals. Now, if you agree with those goals, that's fine. But if you don't agree with those goals, we got a problem. And then we're going to plan for communities of opportunity and actively address regional disparities. So what does that mean? What is a regional disparity? So here's the key. The Kirwan Institute is going to identify the regions with the disparities, and you are going to be obliged by contract, by taking the money, to fix them. That's what this means. So now let's go on and look at what Kirwan Institute did for RhodeMap RI. Let's go back to RhodeMap RI. Okay, so now we go to the documents section. Let's jump over here for a minute. So on the documents section, I'm going to move you. There's a lot of stuff here, and I encourage you to read and read and read and really get familiar, right? I'm not here to tell you to believe me. I'm here to read for yourself. So opportunity maps. Opportunity maps look at our state across a number of indicators and categories, including education, social, economic, housing, neighborhood, transportation, mobility, and health, pretty much everything, and the environment. And you can look at the interactive maps. But before we do that, let's click on the Learn More. So they tell you pretty much what it is, right? So the opportunity maps were generated by no other than the current Kirwan Institute, the same group I just showed you back on the sustainable communities. So what bothers me about this is that I thought that Rhode Island was heading this initiative. It's obvious that Rhode Island's not in control here at all. This is RhodeMap RI. That's just a fancy name for a sustainable communities initiative based on HUD. Okay? So now let's go see. So let's go grab an interactive version of the map. They already did this analysis, right? So when we go look at the interactive version of the map, now you can do your own research, but I'm going to give you my take of what I think this means. So the areas with dark colors are very high opportunity, and the areas with low colors are low opportunity. Now what caught my eye is, I'm a little selfish, I am a Portsmouth resident. But you should look at it from your community to figure out what this means. So if I look at the town of Portsmouth, is right here, this entire area that's in very high opportunity, and this island here. We own this property. And I believe that we are probably, from what I can tell, the only municipality that is completely colored in very high opportunity. A very high opportunity means that we don't meet the profile. That we don't meet the profile for a sustainable community. Now you may agree or disagree with that, but that's what that means to the Kirwan Institute. And now we entered into a contract at the state level that says that we will fix that to make sure that we meet the profile. Now, what's wrong with this? Let's go back to the state of Rhode Island, Article 13. Article 13 says that the people in Portsmouth shall decide for themselves what the town looks like. Well, this is very disturbing because now we have the maps telling us that we don't look the way they want us to look. Therefore, we need to change. Okay? All right. So there you have the maps. All of this is available to you. You can look at it yourself. So let's go back to the documents for a minute. Bear with me here. So under the documents, there's a lot of good stuff here. But what I want to look at is, let's skip past here. And down here, there is something called an equity profile of Rhode Island. This one just caught my eye. So I'm always interested in who wrote these and where they came from. PolicyLink. Does that look familiar? Well, PolicyLink. Oh, that's exactly what this website is. So PolicyLink, which is this website that tells you how they're going to enforce that you meet all of the requirements, is the same group that wrote the document on the profile of Rhode Island. So they took it upon themselves to write what they think of Rhode Island, and then the solutions. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey, and I'm not saying that I disagree with all of this, okay? I'm just saying that I disagree with top-down leadership, all the way from the top. It's the other way around. We, the citizens, own the state. And the cities and towns should govern themselves. So here's what PolicyLink has to say about Rhode Island. The analysis of Rhode Island shows that communities of color are driving the state's population growth and are essential to the region's economic success now and into the future. I don't necessarily disagree with that. That's a pretty good opinion. The fact that they're communities of color I could care less with. Remember, I'm Hispanic, but I don't want to see myself as that. We need to drive, the citizens drive the state. So, but then they go on to say that while the state demonstrates many economic strengths, wide racial gaps in income. There's just wide gaps in income, period. Right? The wealthy are becoming wealthier, as we say, and the middle class is disappearing. It has nothing to do with race, folks. It's just what's happening in America. And then they go on to say that, health, opportunity, coupled with a shrinking middle class. So if you read this paragraph, right in the summary on face value, it's an opinion. It is an opinion from PolicyLink about Rhode Island. What I would have preferred is to have seen Rhode Island legislators and people in Rhode Island decide what the problems in Rhode Island are and how to fix them. So we have an outside entity under the federal government telling us what's wrong with Rhode Island. Okay? But then it gets a little bit deeper. So now what happens is not only are they telling you what's wrong with it, they're going to tell you how to fix it. To secure a prosperous future, the state leaders must take steps to build a more equitable and sustainable economy. Right? So that may be true. The problem is that this initiative isn't done by the state. So you can go on and read the rest of the document, but I'm just going to scroll through it quickly to show you how embedded PolicyLink's research is into RhodeMap RI. So in case you don't believe me that this came from the top, look at these graphs, these maps. You will find all of this material deeply embedded into RhodeMap RI. It was lifted right out of this document, which was not written in Rhode Island. As a matter of fact, let's look, if you look closely, you can do your own research, but you'll find out that, it was written outside of Rhode Island. Okay. So now let's go back. RhodeMap RI. And I didn't look at every single document yet. Just the few that I've touched have me deeply concerned. So now let's go look at RhodeMap RI project materials. Now, I've done project management. I understand what these mean. They usually are the agreements for the project. So one thing that caught my eye is RhodeMap RI grant application. So when we applied for the grant, it probably came with terms and conditions. So let's see what they were. All right. So when we look at the grant, we find out, oh, somebody was appointed to be the overseer for the grant, and that is Kevin M. Flynn, Associate Director. Okay, so Kevin M. Flynn is responsible for the overall project plan for RhodeMap RI. Now, my other concern was, is this a binding agreement? So as I came down near the bottom, so as I figured, there actually is an agreement here. Certification and consistency with sustainable communities planning and implementation. Basically, this is saying that this entire document you're bound to, and you have to abide by the document. And if you look, Mr. Flynn signed the document. Now, I don't know what his authority is, whether to sign it and whether he binds the state or not, but he is Rhode Island, he is the Associate Director of Rhode Island Division of Planning, so there is some binding, at least something here that the document was signed by a state, somebody who works for the state. Okay. So where we start to read, and this is the other part so now in a binding document, things get really ugly, in my opinion. So here we go where they tell us about Rhode Island, how it evolved, where we are today. And then they tell you about how the corridor was developed, and how we grew. Now, this is rather interesting and can be viewed one of two ways. They have their view on it. I have my view on it. It says the state's suburban communities, that's us, Portsmouth, Middletown, outside the city, that we gained 56,000 jobs, while the cities lost 10,000 jobs. To me, that's capitalism 101. It's the way democracy works. What this says to me is that business owners put their business where they saw fit, and people moved to where they saw fit, and they seem to like the suburban communities. What's wrong with that? This is America. That seems okay to me, and that the cities lost 10,000 jobs. Now, you read this and you go, well, that's just a statement and a fact. Well, that's okay if it's just a statement and a fact. But the next paragraph they head into is very disturbing. So this is an opinion. This pattern of low density, large lots, single use, and scattered sprawl development unnecessarily consumes vast natural resources, requires redundant taxpayer investments in facilities infrastructure, and is not sustainable. Now, maybe it's not sustainable, maybe it is, but this gives the intention of what sustainable communities are after. I am going to make it clear here. They are after destroying the single-family home, all right? They don't want you living in a single-family home with a decent piece of lot size. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't watch out for our natural resources and that sustainability is bad. The problem is that when you want to force people to move out of the suburbs or villainize, basically victimize them, or basically make them the cause of the problem. Our economic problems in Rhode Island have nothing to do with this. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, they already showed that they have nothing to do with this. I contend that these single lot sizes and suburban communities are working. That's why we gained 56,000 jobs. It's not the other way around. Now, so once again, all opinion and what they think. But the problem is that when you come down to this section, where do we want to be? Now they're going to tell you their vision. The Rhode Island of 2030 will be a unique and special place. Well, it will certainly be unique. I don't know if it will be special. And they tell you, you know, look, it's going to have its distinctive landscapes and all the good things about it. But this sentence is very disturbing to me. The state will have contained sprawling housing and commerce. Now, how can the state contain sprawling housing and commerce if Article 13 protects us to govern as we see fit? And social interactions will be concentrated in dense centers of varying scales. Greater Providence will be the region's premier center for people and culture. You've got to be kidding me. The state has already spoken right here in this line. Why do you think 10,000 jobs left? You cannot force people to move back there. Now, I contend to Sustainable Communities initiatives. Go build it. Leave us alone and you go build your sustainable communities. And if they're so great, maybe I'll consider moving there. But don't come into my backyard and tell me how to live and that my way of life isn't right. This is the American dream. So now you say, well, Sal, you know, you're very fortunate you live in Portsmouth. Yes, I am very fortunate I live in Portsmouth, but I worked very hard for what I have. Here's the problem I say to those that might be up and coming or to our young people that are just leaving college. Don't you want the aspirations to be able to do what I did? And to do what some of the people did to obtain the single-family home. Now, the beauty of America is freedom. It's the fact that you can live in the suburbs if you like. If you don't like that and you think sustainability is for you, then go buy yourself the one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan or whatever rural area you want, or live wherever you want. That's my point, guys. This is what really worries me about the overreaching government here. We have the right to govern ourselves in our cities and towns, right? Now, I'm not saying that equality isn't correct. Of course equality is correct. We need to treat everybody equal. But I don't see any signs in Rhode Island that say, you know, something like, you know, Southerners need not apply. It doesn't exist, guys. It really doesn't. So what I see is, sure, there are a lot of problems in the cities. And that's why people are living, these jobs were lost, because people don't want to live there. Whatever the reason is, I contend go fix those problems in the cities and attract people back. Don't come out into the suburbs and destroy the suburbs that are actually working with 56,000 jobs. That just makes sense to me. I would love for Providence to be a great place to live, and for those of us that like city life can so choose to go move there. Okay. So that's really the problem here. And this document, agreement document, pretty much tells you, just these opening remarks tell me what the agenda is here. This is not an economic recovery plan that's going to generate jobs. Okay? Now, I'm going to point out one last part, and this is the part where I want you to put your hat on and think like a businessman. You are a business person. You're going to bring your business, a small business, to Rhode Island. And to me, RhodeMap RI should signify and be a poster child for attracting new business. That's how I thought of it, but it's not that. So here I am, a new businessman. I see RhodeMap RI and I say, wow, this sounds pretty good. So let me go find out about this RhodeMap RI and let me go get the plan document so I can read it. So down I come to actually fetch in the documents. Let me find it here and come grab the actual plan document. So there's some hearing reports. Here we go. Full Economic Development Plan Draft. Now, I may get some blowback here, but I ask you, you know, to really be patient, right? And just follow me here for a minute. This is the document that a businessman should be able to pick up, read, and be influenced to move their business to Rhode Island. That's what I thought, but that's not what this is. So Lincoln Chafee signed it, and we can go down through it and we can see sort of the same type of perspectives about RhodeMap RI, right? And where and what it should do. So if we just do a couple searches here, on a term, social equity, we've heard that from sustainable communities, and we see social equities here, and I'll just cut to the chase, but social equity is mentioned throughout this document literally about 20 some times. Okay, now this is supposed to be what I thought an economic recovery plan. Here's another term, racism, appears in a document like 4 or 5 times. Okay, now that's just to point out. Now I'm not saying racism is a bad word. I'm just saying that I don't understand why it belongs in an economic recovery plan. Right? You could say that we need to have equal opportunity programs. That's fine. That's worded well. But this leaves a very negative connotation in something that I would hand a businessman or woman. Okay. Now, to come down a little further, this is at the bottom, right? At the bottom of the document, there's a whole section, social equity principles. Guiding principles of social equity. And some of these principles, by the way, Alan Fung pointed them out in an open letter back to Mr. Flynn, and I'm pointing out the same areas. So this section C says, use of public funds for the public good, particularly marginalized populations in the community, not private profits. And everybody can say, well, okay, what does that mean? So if it was just that sentence, that's fine. But they go on down here to say any project receiving public funds must guarantee to be in the best interests of the public, particularly the working class, low-income communities and communities of color. Now, I don't know if you need to be that harsh to say that project funds, meaning funds from building social communities, should only be used in this way. I don't agree. All right. They should be made equally available to low-income communities and communities of color, and they should be made equally available to other people trying to open maybe bigger businesses like a boat builder in Portsmouth. They would never qualify under this. And it says, do not give public subsidies to private developments unless the projects are guaranteed to bring sufficient benefits to the Rhode Island residents and, once again, low income and communities of color. Well, look, if you don't give money to private developments, you don't generate jobs. It sets a bad taste. If I was reading this document looking to bring a company here and I was a boat builder, let's say, I'd walk away. Because what this is telling me is Rhode Island is not friendly to any business that is a high-end business. Think about that for a minute, guys. I'm not saying we should go overboard, but we have gone totally in the other direction. And this is in the Rhode Island, in the Rhode Island plan document right now. So one more site I want to show you is Commerce RI. That's a group that's been around a while. They were kind of charged with also planning the future of how to attract new business. Now, so I was kind of curious, you know, what does Commerce RI think about RhodeMap RI? So what I did is I went to the management of Commerce RI and I found that Marcel Valios is the executive director. And I emailed him and asked him, Marcel, what do you think about RhodeMap RI? Now, what's interesting about that is that he explained, and he emailed me back, and he told me, look, Sal, we generated a report called RI Economic Development Full Report. And he gave me the link to it. This is actually his email. And we're going to go download that for a minute. All right. And in the email, I'm not going to show you the whole email, but basically what he said was, look, we wrote a report on an economic development plan to recover Rhode Island. And this is it. Now, what's interesting about Commerce RI is that Commerce RI is actually made up of about 300 business owners and business entities in Rhode Island. So this report was actually put together by Rhode Island businesses and citizens, okay, with the input from them. And he made that clear to me. And what he said is that they stand behind the work of this report and that they submitted this report into RhodeMap RI. And about 2/3 of their work made it into RhodeMap RI. And they were pleased with that. But that got me thinking that Marcel didn't answer my question. My question wasn't, what do you think about the economic development plan from Commerce RI? My question was, what do you think about RhodeMap RI? And I have not heard back from him when I asked him to please tell me what he thought about RhodeMap RI. But he did ask me if I had some suggestions of how to make RhodeMap RI better. And I suggested to him that he go back to the 300 people, the outstanding people in Rhode Island who helped build this economic report for Commerce RI, and ask them to review RhodeMap RI and then have a survey to see how they feel about it. That was my input, and I still suggest that. But I'm going to show you just a couple things that are different. And so when I picked a couple certain words, so let's go do that here. This is a report written by business professionals who want to recover Rhode Island's economy. So you don't find these terms in here, right? Is my point. You don't see words like sustainable equality. You do see words like, you could do this for yourself. You do see words that say equal opportunity in this report. You don't see words like racism in this report. Of course not. So what is in the report? Well, what's in the report, actually, if you look through it, is actually a summary, a real good summary, right? So they tell you, look, the report was built by industry leaders and workforce, the 300 or so who gathered with us over months to talk about. This was a report generated in Rhode Island for Rhode Island. This is not how RhodeMap RI was generated. And what I find disturbing is that Marcel doesn't want to answer to what RhodeMap RI is. All right. So I ask every legislator and every citizen. Now, he is not an elected official. I think he did a great job, that group, right? So I don't mean to come down on him hard. I'm just saying that we have entities within Rhode Island that are clearly capable of defining an economic recovery path for Rhode Island from within Rhode Island, and we have shut them down. Okay. So now, as you go through this report, you see a lot of facts, a lot of numbers. Not a lot of talk about where people should live, how they should live. Small, single-family homes are bad. That it just isn't in here. Okay, there are things in here about climate change because they have to worry about that. There are things in here about workforces changing, but you don't have these harsh words that continue to divide us further and further in this country. Okay, so that's basically all I'm going to tell you, is to go do your homework, read both reports, okay? This report, just to be sure you know where to get it, because it seems to have disappeared from the Commerce RI website, but if you use this URL right here, it's still there. I just can't find it on the website. But you can get the full Rhode Island Economic Development full report from this URL, and you can just go get everything else for RhodeMap RI from the RhodeMap RI site, including their full economic development draft. And in conclusion, that's kind of, I felt compelled to convey and get this message out there. I am deeply disappointed with what RhodeMap RI is, and I am seriously concerned for the state of Rhode Island and how much we will be able to protect ourselves from being infiltrated into our cities and towns. So even though we have Article 13 that protects us, we need to be very careful about what grants we accept and sign at the town level and what strings come attached with them. Okay, now for those who think that maybe I'm being a little paranoid, I want to show you one last thing in closing about HUD and the power that HUD has. And once again, I encourage you to read for yourself. So, Westchester County and the HUD lawsuit. Lots of articles here. One particular one that I thought there's a lot in here, but when you read through this, so this one from the Wall Street Journal is a good read, but I encourage you to do your own research and do your own reading. But what's happened here is basically, real quick, is that HUD came into Westchester County, told them you need low-income housing, well, affordable housing. The Westchester County officials agreed with HUD, entered a contract, said we will build it. They built most of the housing in Yonkers. Now I want you to consider something. Westchester County, if it were a state, would be the 7th most diverse state in the nation. Westchester County is already very diverse. So, but what happened was after they built the housing there, HUD said, we don't like where you built it. We think that you need to build it somewhere else where you're not those dark areas I showed you on the maps. They built a map like that basically and said, you need to build it here. And now Mr. Astorino, who took office in 2010, is basically telling HUD, you can't tell us to change zoning in certain areas. And his take, which I agree with him, is the only thing keeping people out of those areas is financial. You don't have enough money to move there. There are a lot of whites that don't have enough money to move there. There's a lot of people who don't have enough money to live in Armonk, New York. I don't have enough money to live there. I don't have enough money to live in portions of Westchester County. It's got nothing to do with race. The housing is there. There is affordable housing. And the bottom line is I have to agree with him. Now you should go on and read, because whether you agree with what I'm telling you or not, the bottom line here is that HUD, when HUD doesn't like results, they inflict pain. HUD didn't like these results. So the agency's federal monitor brought in the left. You can read it all, right? I don't want to go into it all, but they basically generated report cards on the communities, right? And then they withheld the HUD funds for the housing they did build. So basically what happens is when you take this money, you basically are bound. And now you took the money with the expectations that more money will flow to help, because after all, it is subsidized housing, right? And then they withhold the money from you. So that's something to think about. So if you don't think that this stuff comes with teeth, go read up on the Westchester County HUD lawsuit and do your own reading and then decide. Thank you for your time. I know I took about 30 minutes of your time, but I think it's well worth it. If you're concerned, as I am, contact your local officials. Most importantly, make sure that they are aware to protect our Article 13. Okay, that we need to protect our cities and towns so that we don't give away our freedoms. If you're not concerned and you agree, then I guess we just don't have the same viewpoints, and that's okay too. I respect you. So have a good day.